everyone. So I woke up this morning and I was like all ready to film my second video about how to buy a house, and I woke up with a hideous sty and I was like, oh, I can't use makeup on my face. And then I thought, do you know what? I don't care, I'm going to put on a bit of foundation and lippy and just leave my eyes, and I'm going to film it anyway because I'm really excited to share this information on my channel, and so many of you have said that you enjoyed it. So I wrote down a bunch of notes about basically the whole process of buying a house. And now it's so funny because when you're in it and you reach out to people who have bought a house already, they're like, oh god, I can't remember that, oh god, I don't know. And actually I really struggled to remember everything, and so if I have forgotten things then I am really sorry, but I thought that it would just be helpful, because when you're at school, like half the things I learned at school I've never used, and I wish they had taught things like this, because especially for me, I did it on my own. I didn't have anybody else like doing it with me to make these decisions and all of that kind of stuff. Like I was going in blind, and it was quite a daunting process really. So I'm just gonna read off my notes and go through, and I think like a couple of people sent some questions, but I think I've covered them all off in these notes, but I'll just check at the end. So essentially what this video is the process of buying a house and what kind of process you will go through. Initially, when I knew I wanted to buy a house, I knew that I had to have 3 years worth of accounts. Now quite a few people have asked me, what does that mean? So I'm self-employed, and as a self-employed person you are in control of your tax, and therefore you have to, oh I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, bless me. Okay, so yes, you are in control of your tax, and therefore that means you have to do your own tax return. And so a tax return is filed based on yearly accounts. Now the financial year runs from the end of March to the beginning of April, and essentially that is how the financial year runs. Now for me, I have an accountant. Some people do it on their own, but 3 years worth of accounts just basically means 3 financial years worth of accounts, and accounts mean proof of how much you've earned over that year. Because basically you have to declare your own tax. So when you get paid as a self-employed person, you are paid everything, and then you have to pay the tax man. Whereas when you're in a office job or you're not self-employed, you are given the money and it's all yours. You have your national insurance and your tax deducted before it even gets to you, and it's the other way around when you're self-employed. So it can feel like you have more money, but you don't, because you owe it to the tax man. When you are self-employed, a bank, if they're lending you money to buy a house, need to be able to see how much you're earning. Now, if you are not self-employed, you won't need this. Basically, as long as they can see that you've been in a job and you get a monthly salary, they won't really mind. But with self-employment, you're a little bit more of a risk, and they need to see consistency in your earnings, or like consistent growth, to show that you're reliable. And typically 3 years is what they would ask for. Some banks ask for 2. It really does depend on your circumstances, and it really will depend if you're buying a loan. For me, I knew that 3 years would just be a fail-safe. I knew that if I was buying it on my own, the likelihood of them giving me a mortgage on 2 years was pretty slim, and there's no other person's income to kind of bump up the security for a bank to want to lend me money. So 3 years worth of accounts is what I knew I would need. I hope that explains that a little bit better. So once you have enough accounts to apply for a mortgage, you will need to go to your accountant, and they will need to fill in forms to be able to kind of like prove that you have earned a certain amount over these past 3 years, and it will be the most recent 3 years. So once you have done that, you need to get a mortgage. Now for me, what I did was I got a mortgage broker. I have no idea about mortgages. I have no idea about anything to do with lending money. It's straight over my head. Like, I would never be able to know what a good mortgage offer was. And so for that reason I got a mortgage broker. Now, a mortgage broker essentially does all of the difficult work for you. They take all of your information and basically they put it through a system which will give all of the mortgages that are available and will pick the one that is best suited to you. Now, if you're looking for a mortgage broker, I would definitely recommend going on recommendation. I use somebody that was like a family friend, and so I knew that he was like a good guy. And also you want to get a mortgage broker that is open market, and what open market means is that they're not biased to certain banks. So some mortgage brokers will have better rates and they'll get a better fee with certain banks, but if you're open market, that means that you can pick from any lender and it won't be any more beneficial to the mortgage broker. So they'll just have your best interests in. So just make sure you check, is your mortgage broker open market? And essentially what you'll do is you'll pay them a set fee. I paid my mortgage broker £500. I paid, oh God, how did it work? I paid an initial fee at the beginning for him to do the work, and then I paid him the rest of it on completion of the mortgage, because if the mortgage didn't complete, I wouldn't have to have paid him. So it's basically on the basis that you have a successful mortgage. Okay, so once you have found, like you have confirmed that you can get a mortgage, you'll get a mortgage promise, and that lasts for however many months that the bank wants to do it for. I think it's 6 months, that will essentially say you can borrow this money and you can buy this house, and it's kind of proof to the person that you're buying the house from and the estate agents that you're serious. Without a mortgage promise, estate agents won't really take you seriously, so you need to get one of those, and that will be through your mortgage broker. And then once you've put your offer in to the house, so basically you view the property that you like, I would definitely recommend going for a second viewing. If you really like it on the first viewing, go for a second viewing. Take people with you that will have a good eye to know what to look out for when buying a house, especially if it's your first time and you're like, oh my God, I love it, and you're totally overcome by like the emotions of the situation. Take someone with you that can be a little bit more level-headed and be like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So after a few visits, that's kind of typical of viewing houses. You can put your offer in. Your offer will be based kind of like around the mortgage promise that you have. You'll then wait for the vendor. The vendor is the person who is selling the house. You'll then wait for them to accept the offer or kind of like counter offer it. So when I was talking about in my last video that you can go and view houses that are higher value than what you actually have budget for, so I actually offered £10,000 less than the asking price, and I got it for £7,000 less than the asking price. Like, we negotiated back and forth a little bit, and at this point, this is the thing where you can, if you've only been for 2 viewings, so there's some things that you just won't know about the property yet, so it's always better to go in lower to start with anyway. But they might say, oh well, we'll bring it down to this price and we'll include this with the property, so we'll leave the cooker, or we'll leave the washing machine, or we'll leave the fridge, freezer, and all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of like how it will go. And this is obviously with pre-existing houses that you're buying a house from somebody else. I have no idea about new builds and things like that, so I'm really sorry if you're looking at new builds. I don't know anything about that. Once your offer has been accepted, and that's on the basis of what will be included and all of that kind of thing, you will be sent a memorandum of sale from your estate agents. Now, it's basically just a document that confirms the offer's been accepted, who the seller is, who the buyer will be, and the price that you've said you've agreed on, and what will be included. And at the same point of this memorandum of sale being kind of updated, you will also be appointed a solicitor. Now, I guess it works differently for everybody, but my estate agents recommended a solicitor that they use frequently, and I just went with them. They were called Chadwick Lawrence. They were based in York, so I never saw them. I just dealt with them over the phone and over email and through post. It doesn't matter if your solicitor is yonks away from where you live, but recommendation is always best again. And yeah, I was like, my estate agents recommended them as someone that they use constantly. They're estate agents, I'm just going to use them. Yes, then you'll receive your memorandum of sale. It will have the solicitor's details for the vendor, and it will have your solicitor's details listed on there as well. It's not a legally binding document, so do remember that. If at any point anybody wants to change anything with regards to the price or the what's going to be included within the property, it's not legally binding, so nobody owes anybody anything based on the memorandum of sale. Okay, so at this point you want to get a survey done on the house, and a home buyer survey will be kind of like the best survey to get done on most properties. It's pretty much all inclusive. It covers most things that you'll need to know about the property. You can get like structural surveys, but pretty much everybody gets a home buyer survey as like the thing that they get. But yes, a home buyer survey is kind of like, you really want to get it done before you buy a house, because essentially what it will do is a surveyor will come out and he'll look at, or she will look at everything in the house and give you a really detailed report of the state and condition of the house. Now, my survey, and I think that this is pretty much standard, was £450, and that's including VAT. It gives you the chance to say, actually, this house is basically falling down, it's too much money, I can't buy it, I want to pull out of the process, because at this point you're not financially bound in any way. So if you get the home buyer's report back and it's like, whoa, too many red flags, you can pull out safely. Alternatively, there may be some things on there that you're like, actually, I've said I'm going to pay £500,000, but really I should only be paying £495 because there's quite a lot of work that needs to be done, which I'm prepared to do, but I'm not prepared to pay that top whack price. And it's a really good way to be able to go back to the vendor and say, look, this is what's kind of the situation with the house, what do you want to do about it? Actually, like, it will look at all things like it won't test electrics or water or gas, but it will be able to give you kind of like an indication of whether there's anything wrong with it on reflection. But you will also need to get an electrician to look at the electrics in the house. You will need to get plumbers in to like look at the water and drainage and things like that. These aren't things that you have to do, like with the electrics and the water, but it is recommended because you could have you might need to have the whole house rewired, and that would be really expensive. So a home buyer's report will advise you to get an electrician or a plumber or whatever to look at the property, but the thing that you really need to do and you should do is get a home buyer survey and just make sure you know what the condition of the house was. Now, so for me, there was quite a bit of work that needed doing to the house, and this was like a sticking point for a really long time, and it can be quite tricky, especially, well, it's just circumstancing, it's just totally based on circumstances really, but this can be the tricky part of the situation, and obviously you're spending a lot of money, so you want to be careful about what you're buying into, so don't be afraid to ask. So also, when you're buying a house, you need to know that you're not paying your estate agent anything. The person who is selling their house is paying the estate agents. They take a percentage of the fee of the house sale. So you don't need to pay the estate agents anything. Essentially, they work for the vendor, not for you. And then kind of like once you've either renegotiated what you want to pay for the house or you're happy to proceed, it will then kind of like be handed over to the solicitors. And at that point, it's probably about 4 to 6 weeks of them doing loads of like paperwork, and you will have loads of forms and stuff to fill out. They will send you kind of like an estimate estimate of costs for how much their fees will be, and they are variable, so it's not like set in stone, but you will get a better idea of how much you're going to be paying them. And again, that will completely depend on your circumstances, stamp duty, all of those kind of things. So stamp duty differs between how much you're paying for a house. So if it's over 200,000, I think, then you pay a higher stamp duty, and if it's under, then you pay lower. But I don't know all of the ins and outs about stamp duty. I just know how much I paid. But you want to be prepared for solicitors' fees and stamp duty, and that will differ depending on how much you're spending on a house. At this point, solicitors might have a lot of questions for the vendor, so they will go to the vendor's solicitors, ask them loads of questions and wait on the vendor's replies to those, and they can take a while because really it's quite a detailed process, and things about what land you own and who's responsible for what and all of that kind of thing. All of those things need to be really clear. Yes, that process can take quite a long time. So once you have, sorry for looking down, I'm like trying to keep track of what I'm saying. So once all of that's done and your solicitors are happy to kind of like proceed forward to exchange, if you've got a Help to Buy ISA, that will need to be closed. And one of the things that I didn't realise is that can take up to a week. I thought you could just go into the bank, close the account, get the statement and send it straight to the solicitors, and that's not how it works. You need to go into the bank and you need to close the account, and then the statement will take about 3 to 5 days, and then once you've received that statement you can send it to the solicitors. Then the solicitors will request the funds from your bank. With regards to the Help to Buy ISA, I had a few people say to me you can't use it towards your deposit. There are different government schemes. I use the Help to Buy ISA. You can use that money towards your deposit, so don't feel like you can't. It is, what happens is you have your deposit for the house, you have your fees for your solicitors, and that's all kind of like in one pot, so you pay that all in the same time. So when you pay your mortgage for your deposit, you pay your solicitor's fees at the same time, so that includes stamp duty, and stamp duty is the main bulk of the price really for your solicitor's fees. I would say so for me, I had my deposit, and then I had an extra pot of money for solicitors' fees, and then I had an extra pot of money for any work that would need to be done to the house, and like buffer money to kind of like fall back on. I would say it's really important to like have that extra money for the solicitors and for the stamp duty, because that is, you have to have that to buy a house, so it's not just your deposit. And with regards to getting anybody else in, I didn't get a plumber in, but I did get an electrician in just to test the fuse box. Essentially, I had a really old fuse box in the house that was tape, and if a light bulb went or something, a switch wouldn't trip, you would have to change the tape, and I was like, nah, I'm never going to be able to do that. So I got an electrician in to quote for how much it would cost to upgrade the fuse box, and it's all of these things that you take into account when you're buying the house, like how much are you going to be spending when you move into it. I don't know the exact percentage, but I had, I think, £5,000 in my Help to Buy ISA, and I got 1,200. I'm terrible at maths, so you guys work that out in terms of percentage from the bank and how much money they get back. But essentially for me, that covered half of my solicitor's fees, which was great. So it was just kind of like free money. And then once they, like on the basis that you have 3 to 5 days before your solicitors can actually get the money from the bank, you can then suggest a completion date to your solicitor for them to propose to the vendor. So if you have a particular date in mind that you think might be good for completion, then just put that forward, and they can ask the vendors and see what they say. One thing I would say is don't be afraid to chase your solicitors, or your estate agents for that matter. For me, I was really unsure. Like back in the day, I think you used to get charged per letter you got sent and all of that kind of thing, and per correspondence. You don't get charged for emailing them, and you don't get charged for calling your solicitor, so don't be afraid to call or email them. All of the kind of like admin side of things is included in your fees, so there isn't a singular cost for every letter you receive from them. It's kind of like all accounted for in the list of the statement for how much their fees will be. Don't be scared to reach out to your solicitors. It's what they're there for. It's what you're paying them for. You're not going to get kind of like any scary fees for just chasing them, being like, what's the status of the house? Like, can you give me some information? Because you will find that at some point it does just go a little bit quiet, and you're not receiving any paperwork, and you're not receiving daily calls or emails, and you're like, what's going on? I want this house. Like, someone talk to me. You just got to pick up the phone or email them, and they will get back to you. Basically, the difference between exchange and completion: exchange is the exchange of the money. So when you want to exchange, you can only exchange once your solicitors have received your funds for the mortgage. So essentially, you'll have this lump sum of money that you're going to send over for your mortgage. That gets sent to your solicitor. It doesn't get sent to your bank, like whoever the lender is for the mortgage. So in my case, my mortgage is with Santander, but I sent the money to my solicitors, and then they deal with the mortgage. And so I went into the bank, and I asked them to send the funds same day, so it would arrive within the next hour or two, and you do pay a set fee for that, because given the amount of money it is, for me it was worth it, because it was such a large sum of money. You could do it for free and it would take a couple of days, but I was like, I don't want that money to be like in the air for a few days. I just want it to go straight to the solicitors and know that they've got it immediately. So I paid the fee. I think it was £25, which in comparison to how much you're spending isn't too much for peace of mind. So once they have the funds, then you can exchange, and that basically means exchanging of contracts that you've signed already, on the basis that the vendor has signed them as well. Basically everybody at that point is happy. It's at that point, if anybody pulls out, that you are legally bound, so you will have to cover solicitors' fees and all of that kind of thing. If contracts have been exchanged, you are legally bound, and you really don't want to get to that point and feel like you need to pull out. So just bear that in mind. And then you have completion, and that will usually follow kind of like the next day. So for me, I exchanged on the Thursday and completed on the Friday. Completing just means that you go in and you collect the keys from your estate agent, and the house is yours. And it's a really weird feeling, because in the lead up to it, it's so like mental and there's so much going on, and then completion, you're just like, oh, okay, it's mine. Like it's a really weird feeling. You need to consider money wise, that I didn't really know about. So you'll need life insurance. If anything happens to you, if you get ill and you can't pay your mortgage, then you pay for your life insurance, and it will pay out a lump sum, so it will pay off your mortgage and you don't need to worry about money. That's really, really important to have. I pay £25 a month for my life insurance, and home and contents insurance you will need as well. You have to insure your home, and you want to insure your contents. You have to have your home and contents insurance in place before you can exchange contracts. So your solicitors will want proof of your home and contents insurance before they'll exchange contracts, because otherwise it's too much of a risk for the bank to give you the money if the house isn't insured. Time frame wise, I was a first time buyer, so I had no chain, and the lady who I was buying the house from had no chain. She was moving in with someone else, and so she wasn't waiting on another sale to go through. So that's what they mean when they say chain. Sometimes you can have a really long chain where you're selling a house and you're waiting on whoever's buying your house to sell their house, and the person who you're buying your new house from is waiting for somebody else to sell their house that they want, and it can be a really long process, and sometimes it can all fall through. That's that's not to say that no chain means no problems, because I put my offer in April and I didn't get the keys until October. It's a really long time for a no chain buy. Like, it was a long process, and a lot of that was to do with the fact that it's an old cottage. There wasn't anything major wrong with it, and when I had the home buyer survey done, the surveyor was like, it's a beautiful house, you definitely like are getting good value for money, etc, etc. But for me, there were certain things wrong with the house that I didn't feel like I should be paying for, and there was a lot of miscommunication with the vendor and the estate agents, and periods of time went by where I literally heard nothing, and that could have been like up to 4 weeks at a time. So it can be a really frustrating time, and it's a lot of pressure. I actually did it when I was struggling a lot with depression, and in hindsight I'm like, how did I even get through it? It is the most stressful thing I have ever done. And to be honest, I do think I would have felt a little bit more calm about it if I'd have known what was coming, in terms of time frames, like in terms of like just worrying that like you feel like the control's just been completely taken out of your hands, and your fate is at the hands of a person you don't even know whose house you're buying. And there's so many people involved. You've got the estate agents, you've got the mortgage broker, in my case I had the accountant, you've got the vendor, you've got the vendor's solicitors, you've got your solicitors, you've got the surveyors, you've got the bank, like you've got all of these people that are involved in this process, and that makes it really overwhelming. I think it would be so much easier if there was just one person like that looked after the whole thing, so you just had one person to go to, but obviously that's not the way it works. Yeah, it's a lot, but in the moment it can feel like it's not worth it, and everybody said to me it's definitely worth it once you get through it, and it was. It just took a long time, and I think it's totally depending on circumstances. You just don't know what's going to happen. I thought neither of us having a chain would mean it would be really easy, but it just didn't work that way. But it did work out, and I was persistent and I was strong in the fact that I was like, this is all the money I have in the world, and I'm not letting somebody take me for a ride with it. I'm only going to do what makes me comfortable. I'm only going to do what makes me financially sound. Like, I'm not going to put myself in financial worry just to get a house. Like, I kept my head on my shoulders with it, which meant that it just took a little bit more time, because that's just the way it was. Yeah, I think that is everything. I think this is going to be a really long video, so I'm sorry, but I just wanted to cover everything I could. Let me just double check that there isn't anything else from any questions. I think that's it. I think I've covered everything. I really hope that you guys found this helpful. I wish I'd had a video like this to watch when I started, and obviously if you do have any more questions, if I've forgotten something that's really important, please let me know, and I'll try my best to kind of like answer anything. There's a lot to consider when you're buying a house. There's a lot to take in, but I did it on my own. It is possible. It is the best thing in the world. Like, there's a lot of people saying like that you shouldn't buy now, but for me, I think it's personal circumstances. I feel so much more settled and safe now knowing that I have a house, and also a thing to know is that you will, when you kind of like get your mortgage offer, you will also kind of get monthly prices for like how much an estimate for how much you'll be paying, so you can kind of know right from the off how much your mortgage is going to cost you a month. And then obviously you do have things like council tax. Like, this is all the same for renting and things. That it's a lot of money, but it's more cost effective than renting. So, you know, if you can get yourself on the ladder, I think it's a great thing. Yeah, that's it guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all soon. Bye.